I want to just talk very briefly. The discussion so far has focused on the way in which this program is directed, certainly at the moment, at small business, and that the principal general problem, which is it's attempting to solve, is how to deal with the proliferation of very small businesses in the system of labor standards. But there is this other set of fundamental issues which is running behind in the background, which I'm sure you've heard of, whether or not they were explicit. And I just want to highlight that second set of issues. And the second issues, I think, are best understood in terms of the classic distinction in labor policy between two approaches to administering labor standards. One is a general system in which all labor standards and requirements are administered by a single agency. And the other is a specialized system in which the different aspects of labor law and the different aspects of standards are just each one in the extreme. Each one has a separate agency which is responsible for enforcement. Okay, now the U.S. system is a specialized system. It's not totally specialized, as you can gather from the presentation so far, but we have a tendency each time there's a new regulation or a new area in which we want to increase or regulate labor standards, we create a new special agency. The agency has its own staff, and when the agent goes into a workshop, for example, they look specifically at the particular issue which that agency was created to address. So there's a minimum wage agency. There's an agency which deals with training, an agency which deals with economic development, an agency which deals with discrimination, and often the regulations for particular businesses, as you've heard already, they focus on overtime, on paid leave for sickness and so on, and some of those things are in the same agency, but others are completely different. This contrast, again, let me just draw the contrast to the system in particularly in Southern Europe, in France and Spain and Italy, where you have one agency that is administering the whole of labor policy. So what are the limits of the specialized system? You create silos in which people look. The agency looks only, as I just suggested, at its own jurisdiction, even though the agent may see violations all over the place. They're only interested in the one particular type of violation that they've been created to address. So there's silos, there's a redundancy or overlap. You have the same shop being visited again and again by different agencies. You have competition among agencies for jurisdictions, all of which divert attention from the issue of the standards themselves. And most importantly, what you're failing to do when you have these specialized agencies is to see the relationships between different kinds of violations. For example, the relationship between scheduling, between training, between overtime and vacations and so on. And as we just saw, the result is that your attention is devoted away from looking at what the root cause and addressing the root cause of the violation. So Looking for the root cause typically requires a focus on not on specific violations, but on the broader approach to management, which the specific violations are really just a symptom. Many, particularly in small business, but it's fairly general. The violations are that is, you have a management that really isn't in a sense, a professional management. They don't see their approach to the different aspects of the business as being interrelated, and what you need, especially again for small business, is to provide the substitute for what in very large agencies, very large businesses, is essentially a management education. Hence, the question for this project is, assuming we are able to identify the kinds of programs which will ensure compliance of small business with local standards, can we develop the relationship among the multiple government players which are involved in this, the relationships which will generate a cohesive, coherent approach to enforcing regulation and upgrading business practice in the real world context that we operate in the United States. We couldn't turn American labor standards enforcement into, we couldn't become French or Spanish or Italian in order to solve our labor problems. But hopefully through a project like this, we will be identify some of the practices which will encourage the interrelationship or interaction among the multiple agencies that are involved at several different levels of government.